Hi everyone, today's video is going to be a book cover making video where I'm going to be making 4 book covers in Photoshop. So I needed to make these book covers for a video that I posted a few months ago, the ranking all of my books video. And so today we're starting with this YA fantasy cover. So the first thing that I'm doing is removing these swords or daggers, whatever they are, from the background. This is a free stock photo that I think I got from Unsplash. I wish I'd just used the pen tool to remove this thing. It took way too long to use the selection tool. I should have just done the pen tool. It would have taken me 10 minutes, and I didn't even end up using like the daggers crossed together. I ended up removing one of them, so it was a bit of a waste of time, but I added this nice filter to it to make it look kind of like an illustration. I've added this filter to a ton of my book covers like that have images on them because it makes it look like kind of a drawing. It's an oil paint filter. For this book cover, I knew I was going for something pretty typical of fantasy. I wanted it to just be a sword on like a dark colored background. I ended up having to come up with a title on the spot to make this book cover because I was making this for a project I'd just been endearly calling Sophie and Jake because it never had a name. So I ended up calling it Water Hemlock. I can't remember why. I just needed a title for the cover. And so I really liked the font that I ended up finding. And of course, as usual, I did some bevel and emboss on the letters to make it look kind of metal. And then I started playing around with these little light leaks on the left and right hand side. This is a pretty typical Star Wars poster color scheme, so that's what I was going for. You can watch the rest of it without my annoying blabbing, so enjoy. So the next cover that I'm working on is for my story, The Dreamer, which I talked about all of these in the talking about all my novels, even though no one asked video. And so this one was just pretty basic. I already knew what needed to go on the cover. And what's fun is that I was thinking about designing this book cover for years, like since I wrote it, since I was 12 years old. And I knew that's exactly what it would look like with the dagger on the front, with the feather being split, because that's like the symbol of the dreamers or whatever. They all have that tattoo. And so when I figured that out, I moved on to the lettering. You can see me adding like DIY glyphs to the lettering. I don't have fancy fonts. All of the fonts, the pictures, everything that you see on book covers, they're 100% free. I never use something that needs to be licensed or even demo fonts. And because of that, they don't often come with like nice glyphs for the letters. And so I ended up like drawing my own, which, you know, is crafty, DIY glyphs. And so that's what I did for like the A and then the D and the R, just to make it look like super bougie and like fantasy, but this is like luxe fantasy, you know? I also knew I wanted to do purple, but I wasn't sure about like the rest of the color scheme. And this one was interesting because it took me so long, but it took me like 3 or 4 hours to make this cover because doing the letters, doing the hand-drawn glyph situation was so difficult. It took a while to get everything symmetrical, to make sure it didn't look wonky, the lines were straight. And then beyond that, I wasn't happy with the composition, which we will see in a little bit. And then at the very end, I just added this like super random filter, and that ended up being like the book cover, which was so stupid. It's like you work so hard and then you click one button in Photoshop and you're like, yeah, so all of my hard work, we'll just forget that. Now this is what we're going for. That happens a lot when I'm making book covers, but enjoy the rest of the process of this. It's really just playing around and hoping for the best. So the next book cover I'm working on is for my contemporary novel, Perks and Drawbacks. So this is my first book that I'd ever written. You know, it's a regret. No, I'm just kidding. But it was funny because I had a book cover designed for this book already. When I was 12 and I'd written this story, I had made 2 different book covers. One was the first one I'd ever made. I think I made it in PicMonkey, but then like a few months later, I made like a better version. And that was the book cover that I was, you know, basing the current one off of. It has the sunflower, and then the lettering is kind of this like live, love, laugh, white lady on Instagram lettering. That's what we're trying to go for this book. I hand wrote it in Photoshop. All I did, I added a bit of smoothing on the brush so that it wouldn't be like a complete disaster. And then I just wrote it out myself. That's my handwriting on the book cover. The lettering for Drawbacks, I based it pretty loosely off of a font, but then I wanted it to look less stiff. And so I thought, okay, I'll just copy the font kind of, but in my own handwriting, add a little bit more movement. Movement was pretty important for me on this book cover. I wanted it to look like exciting. I wanted something that represented that playfulness. And so making sure the font was quite loose. And then I also ended up adding some petals, which you'll see later. Enjoy the rest of this speed paint. I really enjoyed making this one. All right, and the final book cover that I made in this video is actually a remake of the original, and it looks quite similar. It's just slightly better. So this is for my novel. This is where the end starts, and this is a young adult contemporary novel. And like I said, I had already made the book cover for this. I actually own like the printed version of this book, and so I needed a book cover. I made it in GIMP, and it was just really basic. But I didn't like it like when I look back on it, and I wanted to kind of make it better, and I knew it would be pretty fast because this is a pretty simple book cover. So it's this stock image of paper. I added a yellow color to it, and I directly color picked from the original book cover, and it ended up being almost like an avocado green, but it kind of looks yellow. Then I did this nice like cutout kind of shadow lettering on some of the letters to make it look like the letters were more a part of the paper instead of just being like pasted on top of it. And that was basically the extent of this book cover. It was just kind of to glow up the original. So enjoy the rest of this speed paint. I'm going to leave it off here. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you in another one. Bye.